I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Kai Sood. I'm unfortunately not joined by my guest host. She had a previous engagement, so she couldn't make it. But thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to start by introducing our guests. So today we are so happy to welcome Dr. Theresa A. Yugar. Theresa is a Latinx scholar who focuses on Latin American feminism with special attention to the intersection of women, ecology, climate change, and migratory patterns. Theresa is also an author known for her book, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, Feminist Reconstruction of Biography and Text. And Sor Juana is considered one of the first feminists in all of the Americas, something Theresa also did a TED Ed on. She has co-edited or contributed to numerous books as well. In addition to this, she co-founded the bilingual feminist blog called Circulando Juntas, or Circling Together in English. And she has had an incredible career, and her accomplishments are many. Welcome, Dr. Yugar. So you're something of an expert, well, you are an expert on Latin American feminism, and you've written on one of the earliest feminist figures in North America, in fact, the earliest, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. Could you give our viewers a little bit of a background on de la Cruz?
Yes, I can. Okay. In Latin American history, Sor Juana was born in the mid-17th century, 1648, 1651 to 1695. She was a poet. She was a Baroque poet. She was a nun. She was an intellectual. She was a bibliophile. She had the biggest library in Latin America. She is a significant woman in both Mexican, European, Christian, Latin American history. Many people did not know about her, and that's why that was the reason why I wanted to study more about her. But yeah, she's a superb writer.
When was the first time you encountered Sor Juana, and was there a particular part of her story which spoke to you?
Yes, I learned about Sor Juana probably in my early 20s. Okay, and I learned about her when I was in grad school at Harvard Divinity School. And it was by chance that I learned about her. It was in the liberation theology class, and for homework, I picked a name, and the name was Sor Juana. I knew nothing about her at the time, so I went to the library to do research on her, to find out more about this woman. And the first thing that I read was one of her poems. And I should have said the poem that I read, and it's in my book. She studies and disputes and teaches, and thus she serves her faith. For how could God, who gave her reason, want her ignorant? So I didn't specifically say, so Sor Juana is a Catholic nun. She's a faithful woman within the Roman Catholic Church. I am a faithful Catholic woman in the Roman Catholic Church. So I was drawn to Sor Juana because what she says aligned with how I understand my talents and gifts, that God did not create women to be ignorant. So that was the beginning of my journey with Sor Juana. And something else that was important is that I am Catholic, and I was in grammar school, high school, and even college. High school and college was with women, but it was a Catholic setting, and I had never learned about Sor Juana. So that's why I was like going, why is it that people don't know about this woman? And that was also the impetus for the TED Ed. And I'm so glad I invested, it was 1.5 years of my life, but I'm so glad I did it, because now it has 5 million plus views. So in the last, since my book was published, it's been purchased by 500 plus people, which is significant in academia, because most books get published and not read. So that's why I was like, hi, I feel so honored that you read it, so I've been studying her for 20 years, and I've realized that Sor Juana, because she wrote in Spanish, and it was Castilian Spanish, so the older Spanish from Spain, it's more difficult to study her writings. So it was important or an asset to me that I know Spanish. I'm not a native speaker in Spanish, but I have studied Spanish in a theological context. So that was the impetus to study more about her, but then also to bring her across the northern border, because most people do not know about Sor Juana, and the challenge is Spanish. But I will also say that in Mexico too, the majority of people, if they don't have higher level education, know minimal about her. So that, not knowing about her as a Catholic woman, I was inspired by her that, yes, I have a master's degree, I have a PhD in women's studies and religion, and Sor Juana is my role model. So you can study and teach and serve your faith too.
And how did you react to the great success of your book? I mean, it is, I believe, required reading for a university as an introduction to some studies. And you have, like you said, millions of views on the video you made with Ted on Sor Juana.
You know what? It's a gift. I'm going to tell you, in academia, people write books, but no one ever reads them. So on our curriculum vitae, our resumes, in the academy, you need to keep publishing. And the reality is that just because you publish it doesn't mean someone reads it. So for it to be a required course text at Cal State University, Dominguez Hills, is big. For it to be in 70 plus libraries across the US is huge. So, and then with the TED Ed, my intention has been, I want as many people to know about Sor Juana as possible. Now, what I want is, I wish the TED Ed could translate the verbal part of it into Spanish, because I have asked TED Ed. I asked them for statistics on where the TED Ed was seen, and the lowest percentage was Latin America. But those are my prime audience. So what they did is, and I'm grateful, is that the TED Ed, you can look at it and have subtitles in other languages. So you know what? It is actually an honor, and it is meaningful that people are actually reading it and enjoying it, because there are some books that are just so painful to read. So that was the intent in the book, was to make it as easy as possible for people to read. And if they wanted to do more research on it, then they could.
I mean, I personally sent it to my grandparents in India, and I think they were able to get Hindi subtitles. If not, they watched it and they loved it. So it's so cool. It's so cool.
It is.
I do want to ask, why don't more Americans and people in the Americas in general learn more about Sor Juana? I mean, she's such an important figure. Why aren't we hearing more about her?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I want to say God bless, within feminist circles, she's more known now in North America, which is a good thing. Now, something I say to my students too, because I teach at Cal State LA, the majority of my students are of Mexican descent, and I still ask them. I tell them about my research in the first class, and I say, how many of you know about Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz? And I might have a couple hands in each class, and it's because they either had a Spanish literature class as an AP class in high school, or they were in the Chicano studies department. But even for my students of Mexican descent, they don't know about Sor Juana. So the first thing that I do is to show her on the 200 Mexican currency. So now she's on the 100 Mexican currency. So, and then when they look at the currency, they know, oh, I didn't know that that person was a nun. I didn't know the significance of the books on that, on the currency. So, and then I asked them, go home and ask your parents and grandparents if they know of this woman and what do they know. So that's how I figured out. It's like going, I think education level is a piece in Mexico in terms of knowledge of Sor Juana. And in North America, it's a language barrier that people don't necessarily know Spanish, and thus they don't have the same access to Sor Juana. But then the other element that I tell my students is that people or teachers teach what they know. So the majority of professors, you know, especially on a high school level, they don't know about Sor Juana. And I did when I was teaching high school in Lincoln Heights, again, predominantly girls in a Catholic setting of, they're predominantly of Mexican descent. And I did present in their upper level or their AP history class. And in their textbook, there was only 5 lines on her. Now, I can speak to you about her in terms of her the interdisciplinarity of her knowledge base. And what I want to do is I want to create a class where every week I could focus on, okay, her life as a poet, her life as a mathematician, her life as a chemist, her life as, you know, an artist, a dramatist. So this is something I want to do. So I'm on vacation. I probably should start doing it. So
I love it personally. I think it's so cool. And I bought my copy and then I bought another copy and was sure to donate it. I go to a Catholic school and I donated it to the school library. So let's make that 71 plus. I love it.
Yay! I'm so excited.
I know. So your book, so your book also makes a point and applies the idea that De la Cruz was one of the precursors to ecofeminism. Firstly, what is ecofeminism?
Ecofeminism draws parallels between the exploitation of women and women's bodies and the exploitation of Earth. Okay, so something that I found really interesting in doing my studies on Sor Juana is how, in her historical context, where from 1518 to 1521, when the Iberian Spaniards came into Mexico and destroyed Tenochtitlan, Sor Juana was very intentional about her placing value both on Mesoamerican history and Spanish European history. And something that's integral to Mesoamerican history is a value of the interrelatedness of all life forms. So I was very interested. I'm an ecofeminist. So other people were saying to me, there's no ecofeminism at all in Sor Juana. And at the time, I just had a sense that it was there, but it is there. And her text, El Primero Sueño, is a perfect example of it, because in this trajectory or in this dream, she is moving through a world of stars and goddesses and the moon and the animals. So I want to work more with El Primer Sueño, because in El Primer Sueño, I focused on the cosmic elements of Sor Juana, and then she brought in the Spanish European Greco-Roman myths. But I want to learn more about Nahua myths, because I have a feeling that if I did study those myths, that they're also in El Primero Sueño too. So that's something that is of interest to me. But El Primer Sueño shows that the natural world is just as important. And she did make she did say a quote that there is nothing in the world that we can't find God in. I'm paraphrasing, but she has this sense that she was a natural philosopher and she respected all ways of knowing, and that included a Mesoamerican sensibility to the earth.
What is the work of ecofeminism, and specifically in your area of focus, which I believe is Mexico?
Yes. Okay, so this is interesting. Now, this is important. Okay, and I have a book, Valuing Lives, Healing Earth, that is going to be published. It's going to be in print, most likely for July 1st. Okay.
Oh, yay!
It is actually, I'm the chief editor, and it's 18 chapters, and it took 4 years, but it's done, and I'm so happy. So when you say, like, what is the contribution of ecofeminism? It is that ecofeminists have a different ideological framework on how we relate to the natural world. We are in a climate crisis. It is a global climate crisis. So in the book, the focus was, it's a transnational book inviting women from all over the world to talk about how they integrate an ecofeminist perspective, whether within their communities or in their lives. So the hope is that, okay, and I've had my students read chapters of my book, and I ask them, I go, okay, this person is in Mexico, this person is, they're actually, you should know, if you don't know, she's not in my book, but Vandana Shiva. She's from India. She's amazing. She does amazing work. She's not in the book, but I'm saying that there's ecofeminists offer mediums or ways for us to deal with climate change. But like I was saying that with my students, I'm saying, okay, this person is in Korea. So tell me, how can we kind of navigate these Korean ecofeminist perspectives within a US context?
Oh, that's so cool.
So that's the aim of the book, is to be able to, how can we think about our relationship with the earth within our context? We live in a capitalistic US society. It's very difficult. And then in a COVID world, everyone is dependent on Amazon. So it's like, what does that look like? How do you try to live a life that is in alignment with the universe? So I would say ecofeminists offer us different ideological perspectives, but it was a Nahua people. There's an article that says that the Aztec people were the first ecological city in the Americas. Now, why is that important? Because in our US context, everything that people say about Mexicans is negative. So in this book, elevating Sor Juana, elevating the Nahua people is important, because the Mexican population, I'm of Peruvian descent, but I'm inspired by Sor Juana because of her Catholic activism within the church.
And that brings me to another question about Sor Juana. Sor Juana had an interesting relation. She was very faithful. When posed with the idea, she was in conflict with multiple authorities and was, I don't know, forced would be the right word, forced to give up her books. And so she decided to channel her expertise into charity work, which I find so cool. But what was Sor Juana's relationship with the church? How would you describe it?
Okay. So within the church at the time, nuns within the convent, you know, their aim was limited access to Latin for prayers. And their role was charity. I just was on a seminar this week with a Mexican symposium on women in the convent. And they were talking about the importance of women in the convent and how they educated young girls. It was a safe place for young women too, against being abused by men before they were married, in terms of being a virgin. But you know what? Do me a favor. Say the question one more time.
Oh, I apologize. So what was Sor Juana's relationship with the church? Because from, you know, it's sort of a complicated one from my understanding.
It is. You know what? Sor Juana's relationship with the church was complex. Okay. The thing is, because she knew Latin by the time she was 6. She was, you know what? She wrote she wrote a poem and won a prize. She was about 4 years old. So she was highly intelligent. So, you know what? She was not, in terms of the ecclesial clerical community, she was a challenge because she had her own views, and she had different views and different theological perspectives. And as a woman, you weren't real, that was not your role. The role was not for women to engage in theological discourse. So the challenges that Sor Juana had with the church is because she was articulate and just as educated as them in the church. So in terms of the bishop, the bishop that, it was challenging. The bishop that was her friend, he kind of threw her under the bus when she gave him a theological treatise that she wrote, but she gave it to this bishop, and he actually published it. So I guess, you know what, maybe it was a love-hate, because I don't know if those are two strong words, but on the one hand, she wrote songs for the church that were sung in celebration of Catherine of Siena and Catherine of Alexandria and the Virgin Mary. So, and on the other hand, she was a challenge because she was such an intellectual. So I think it was both. But I want to say that in this time period, there was patriarchy, the bishop, and there was clerics that were misogynist, that didn't necessarily like women. So,
and I must say, I was personally impressed. You wrote about in your book, and actually mentioned in your TED Ed, when she was questioned, it might have been by her bishop friend or the Archbishop of Mexico, and she just said, she didn't say, oh, that I don't believe in this faith. She said, God created women to have intellect. She truly a genius, just like such an amazing person. As you mentioned before, you, not currently, but you're probably done editing Valuing Lives and Healing Earth, or you are currently editing are you currently editing Valuing Lives and Healing Earth?
Yeah, Valuing Lives, Healing Earth, yes. And then,
which is a piece that provides a platform for women in Africa, Asia, and Latin America to discuss unique ecological experiences and challenges. Did you have one part of the book which you found the most interesting, or one submission, or from a specific region which you found the most interesting?
There was Adrienne Crone. It's wonderful. I mean, they're all wonderful, but I was attracted to her essay because she applies a Jewish ethic to the sacrality of bees and the importance of bees within our ecosystem. but I guess as a Catholic person, I think that people of faith or different religious traditions really should be at the forefront in figuring out God imagery or rituals that are going to bring in or affirm a more ecological world, because the reality is we will not have one if, so yeah, I was drawn to that one.
And then you've also been a major figure in Circulando Juntas, or Circle Together, which is a bilingual, as you describe it, feminist blog. What inspired you to start this? It's such an amazing thing, and like it's not that common. It's not at all common, and especially when worldwide.
In Latin America, there's a group called Conspirando Juntas, breathing or circling together. It started in the early 90s, and it's one of the founders is Judy Russ, and they've been doing wonderful work in Latin America. They look at they do feminist work, ecofeminist work, they do rituals, they do seminars, and what they are doing is critiquing Christian patriarchal views of God, and they're reclaiming indigenous wisdom, especially that of the Virgin Mary and indigenous goddesses throughout Latin America. Okay, so Judy Russ is a mentor of mine, and we were talking about Conspirando. So the reality is that the women in this movement are getting older. The other reality is that our world is going global. So just like your platform, I was like, we were talking about, we need a platform, or it would be nice to have a platform where the women's work in Latin America is more visible in North America, but globally. So the idea is that it's a bilingual blog where we have contributions with people from Latin America, from North America, and trying to move toward having conversations between women in Latin America and North America. So I'm going to tell you honestly, I need more help from a younger person too, like you, in terms of technology. So, every time, so just, I'm inspired by you, and I'm going to, try to galvanize more of my students to help me do this kind of work, because it's important. So again, I'm interested in the women in Latin America, their contributions to be known beyond Latin America. And one of the barriers is Spanish. If you don't know Spanish, you can't know about what they're doing.
I personally, I loved how it's a blog, but also like you guys did almost your own TED Talks, and there were so many things. I personally love it. You authored Virgins Resources for an Eco-Theological Praxis, part of Planetary Solidarity, Women's Voices on Christian Doctrine and Global Climate Justice. What was it like for you to work on that piece?
You know what? It was actually wonderful to focus on Our Lady of Guadalupe and think about her in terms of the Aztec goddesses within Mexico. So Tonantzin, Coatlicue, what's the third one? Coatlicue, Coyoshaki. Okay, so prior to the conquest, throughout Latin America, and see, this is something that was inspired by a book by Conspirando. So it was on virgins too. So I was looking at Mexico and the virgins and Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I was like, why is it that in Latin America, it's the primary medium for evangelization within the Christian church has been Our Lady of Guadalupe? Now, in European Christian history, it's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But when evangelization came in Latin America, it came through women. It came through the different names for women throughout Latin America. So what I was interested in is why. And I think my thought is that I feel as if that Our Lady of Guadalupe was a more appealing image to individuals in Latin America, but in Mexico specifically, in terms of in a post-conquest world, you know, life was devastated, culture, religion was devastated, and then Our Lady of Guadalupe, I feel as if she brought cosmic healing to this social location. So if you understand, or if you look at a picture of Tenochtitlan prior to the conquest and after the conquest, you can understand that Our Lady of Guadalupe, as a mother, as like the qualities of a mother, like caring, you know, tender. So I believe that that aspect of Mary was more healing than God the Father, God the Son. So it's not that, I mean, so that's what was my interest in that article.
You mentioned before you have a degree in divinity, but you've also studied feminism for a long time as well. How do you feel those two come together, divinity and feminism?
You know what? This is very interesting. Okay. So I think it's because I'm Catholic and my faith means a lot to me. So when I went to Harvard Divinity School, that's when I realized, you know, I knew women were important in the Christian tradition, but then I found out why they were excluded. And that was a feminist lens. So a feminist lens allowed me, within a master's context and a doctoral context on women's studies and religion, to be able to say, okay, the reasons why women are undermined or not appreciated is because many of them are nameless. So like and if they're named in the Hebrew scriptures specifically, they must have been really important to be named. But there's a lot of nameless, there's prostitutes, there's widows, there's mothers. So a feminist lens actually helped deepen my faith, because I'm like, the women were there, we just don't know about them. So it's kind of parallel to Sor Juana. The women are there. And actually, we need to say there were more nuns within Sor Juana's convent that were also doing wonderful things. So learning about these women inspires me. And if I didn't have teachers that helped me look at the Christian historical context from a feminist lens, I would not know about these women. So then the other part of it is me sharing with my students or with people in the church about these women. So, and that's why I love at the end of my classes, sometimes I feel like some of my young women or young adults that are women, they have a Sor Juana attitude. And I love it, because they're like, I'm not going to take it. So it's wonderful that to empower, when you know a historical figure that is of your nationality, who was an intellectual, she was a social activist and engaged in politics, and then you can actually see yourself hopefully in that role.
I like that. See, that is what I find so cool. Sor Juana is such an amazing person. She's so inspiring and just learning about her, and you feel compelled to learn more. And I just love her. Do you have a particular piece of Sor Juana's story that you consider to be the most inspiring or the most interesting to you?
You know, I'm going to tell you a quote. She did say if Aristotle had cooked in the kitchen, he would have written a bit more. Okay, I'm paraphrasing that. But I'm going to say too, you know, can I read something from my book?
100%.
You did comment, you know, okay. So, and I love it that you just said her genius. You know how you just said her genius?
100%, yes.
Let me see. I put, in Sor Juana's writings, one sees the mixing and blending of Mesoamerican, Christian and non-Christian ideas, ideologies, mythic figures, and culture into a Christian narrative that welcomes all. Unlike the church, in which a singular male deity, omnipotent and transcendent, was worshipped, Sor Juana embraced a panentheistic understanding of God and the cosmos as living entities best characterized by harmony, equilibrium, and balance between all people, the earth, and human and non-human nature. But I said it here too. Her genius lay in her ability to mix and blend different ideas and worldviews in such a way that reconciliation was possible between Spanish and non-Spanish Christians and the Nahua Mesoamerican peoples. Her legacy is that she united her Spanish and Nahua sides in her presentation of a sueño, so in Spanish dream, to Micle in Nahua dream, into a harmonious world. In this way, she was able to create a more just world, a model for Latina feminists today, who walk in culturally, socially, and racially mixed worlds.
What a spectacular way to put it. I'm so
happy that you're interested, that you're young, and that by talking with you, more people will know of Sor Juana. So as an academic, I'm going to say, like, the focus is on books, on writing. But my focus has not been solely on books, because I'm like, you should share the knowledge you know. So that's why the TED Ed, it took a long time to do it, but it was well worth it. So many more people beyond reading my book know about her. And if they're interested, in learning more about her, they can, you know, go online or do research on her.
It's been such an honor to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us. For our viewers, we will have a link to Circulando Juntas in our description below. If this is on YouTube, if you're listening on any of our podcasting sites, including Apple Podcasts, you can go to farmbrookfreepress.com/interviews, and you'll be able to see our interview links there. And thank you so much. And be sure to buy Theresa's book. It's available on Amazon. We'll put the links in the description below, as well as on our website. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you so much. You know what? You give me hope.